Hello, and welcome to Bite Size Legal, where we tackle legal issues one bite at a time. My name is Drew Jenkins, and I'm an attorney licensed in the states of Georgia and Alabama. And today, we're taking another bite out of LLCs, or limited liability companies. Last week, we covered how LLCs are the most flexible entity type available. So we need to remember that an LLC does not exist in federal law, which means if you're a sole member LLC, you have the choice of being taxed as a sole proprietorship or choosing to be a corporation. And if you have multiple members in your LLC, then you can choose to be taxed as a partnership, which is the default rule, or you can choose to be a corporation. Now, the decision between the two, I leave to the hands of your CPA. They're going to know, for tax purposes, which entity type will work better for you. Another reason why LLCs are so flexible is that it is not an LLP. So an LLP means a limited liability partnership, and it's going to carry over with it all of the case law regarding partners. And there, in that very lengthy case law and by statute, there are certain duties and obligations that partners owe each other. And for LLCs, again, depending on your jurisdiction, you are going to be able to eliminate all or some of those duties and obligations that exist between partners. Now, the bite number one is you should have a written operating agreement. There are default rules that say how companies operate, but if you are engaged in business, you're going to work with a large vendor, or you're going to borrow funds, one of the first things that will be asked of you is, I need to see your operating agreement. And the reason is because you need to decide how the company is going to decide. So this leads to sort of our second bite of the day, is you need to make a decision about decision making. Are you going to be member managed, or are you going to be manager managed? We remember talking about general partnerships that each partner in the company is able to unilaterally make decisions on behalf of the company unless your partnership agreement says otherwise. We also remember that in a limited partnership, the limited partners must refrain from making most decisions or running the company day to day, whereas the limited partner's general partner is vested with sort of operating the day to day. So in an LLC, you have the same choice to make. Are the members going to be actively involved in the day-to-day decision making, and or are you going to be required to consult them for all of the decisions of the company, which would be typically true with a general member managed LLC? Or, this is most common for real estate, are you going to allow the day-to-day decision making and even some of the big decisions to be made by a manager? And then each of the other members are simply putting in funds in an investment situation. Again, it's going to look a lot more like a limited partnership. And the good news is with a limited liability company, you can actually make it work for you. So you can decide that the manager has the authority to make certain decisions on behalf of the company without consulting the members. But, and this is a common drafting thing we see, the manager cannot dissolve the company. You require unanimity among the members. And the manager cannot dispose of all of the assets of the company. So they can't go sell everything and turn it all into cash. So that is something that you will want to look into when you are crafting your operating agreement in, of course, consultation with all of the other members. Now, if you are a small LLC and everyone's going to be equally involved, member managed is probably pretty good. Now, regardless of how you decide to make decisions, when you work with third parties, they want to feel comfortable that decisions are being made correctly. And so that's why they ask for your operating agreement, is it's going to show how decisions are going to be made. And you are not a corporation, which means there are no corporate formalities, which means there is no need to hold an annual meeting. And in fact, there is no reason to hold a meeting at all. One of a major benefit that I see in LLCs is the action by written consent. Now, of course, you can do things in writing with corporations, and you can have written action by shareholders or whatnot and directors. But in an LLC, generally, it's more common and it's very easy. All of the members that are required, or even if there are multiple managers that are required to make decisions, can certify in writing. You can call it a resolution, you can call it an action by written consent, you can call it anything you like. The important thing is that you have all of the required decision makers agreeing in writing about the decision, and they have all signed it. And obviously, this allows business to flow much faster. You can circulate these things via electronically. Most of the states have actually adopted a uniform electronic signature standard. I know the states of both Alabama and Georgia will acknowledge electronic signatures the same as they do wet ink signatures. And so when you are dealing with members who live in other jurisdictions or even other parts of the world, you can rely literally on DocuSign or HelloSign or Right Signature or anyone that you feel comfortable with that keeps logs, basically, on how to make decisions. So point number 2, or bite number 2, is utilize actions by written consent. Now, whether they are unanimity, whether they are majority, or whether they are supermajority, again, are going to be handled entirely by your written operating agreement. So I just want to talk about in this particular week's episode is talk a little bit more about LLCs and the importance of having a written or company operating agreement. I wanted to make sure that we got the bite that you need to decide how to decide, which is going to fall largely on member managed versus manager managed. And then even then, you have the freedom and the flexibility to decide exactly which decisions need to be made by which groups of people. And even if you have multiple levels or classes of members, the same thing applies, right? So you can have certain groups of members that are required to be consulted and decide certain things. And of course, you want it all in writing. So do not be afraid to sort of avoid these big meetings. If everyone simply agrees, you don't need to go through that formality. You can just put it all in writing, get it signed by everyone, and do it electronically. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you found it informative. If not, I hope you at least found it entertaining. So as always, feel free to leave comments below, or if you're watching in WeChat, feel free to leave it in thread, and see you next week.